Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and welcome back for another review. And I don't know why, it seems like it's been forever since I've done a review or something like that. I don't know why, but just been busy with stuff. But wanted to do a review of a film, Blu-ray just got done watching, The Dark Half. This is a George Romero film that probably one of his least talked about of his filmography. And I'm going to be reviewing another film that I know I reviewed once before, but I want to do a more in-depth review of Monty Shines. That'll be the next review after this. And I was thinking of maybe doing a little George Romero retrospective, but I don't know. I figure maybe I'll save that for like a zombie little marathon because there's Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, stuff like that. And there's a lot of George Romero films that I don't have. Mainly the ones that I didn't really care for too much. I mean, like The Crazies, Night Riders, Bruiser, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. Um, but I do have Monty Shines, which I like, which I'll talk about. Night of the Living Dead, the original, because it was part of a book that a long time ago got, and because that film's public domain, they give you gave you the movie for free. Dawn of the Dead, which is my favorite zombie film. Uh, the original Dawn of the Dead. Day of the Dead, which I really enjoy. And for those wondering, yes, I do enjoy the remake of Night of the Living Dead. I do enjoy the remake of Dawn of the Dead. I hated the remake of Day of the Dead, but I love the original Dawn and Day of the Dead. Not a big fan of the original Night of the Living Dead. I'll explain why whenever I review that down the road. I respect it though. I'm a huge George Romero Dawn of the Dead fan. Land of the Dead I thought was alright. Uh, I don't know, the Crazies I remember not caring for. I actually didn't mind the remake. But I don't know, maybe that's a film I have to give another look. If I ever find that for cheap and pick up the Crazies. Um, Bruiser I remember being very boring. Diary of the Dead. I know I did a rant long ago. That was just thought a really shitty found footage movie for various reasons. Survival of the Dead. I remember a fucking zombie on a horse and a fucking horse being eaten by zombies and some piss poor CGI and shit. Night Riders I remember being extremely long. I mean, wasn't that like a 3 hour movie or maybe almost a 3 hour movie or like 2.5 hour movie? And Creep Show, I do have Creep Show. I enjoy Creep Show. That was actually a gift from a long time ago from someone because it was a DVD from overseas. So I have Creep Show. I do have Martin, thanks to a good guy who sent me that. But pretty much wanted to give that sort of give my thoughts on some of George Romero's stuff. I figured, you know what, it'll just take a long time to go through all of his films. I'll space them out. But again, wanted to talk about The Dark Half. Now, The Dark Half is a film from 1993. One of the last films from Orion. From what I understand, Orion is actually back in business, so to speak. Orion and along with companies like Caracol are actually back, which is pretty cool. But there are very good reasons to be afraid of the dark. And I think this was done in like 91 and it was in limbo for 2 years or such because Orion, by the time this film was being made and pretty much finished, Orion went bankrupt and they had 7 or so films that were in limbo, and this finally got released to little fanfare and got the treatment by Scream Factory. And this is a film that I barely remembered anything about, so I wanted to give another look. And that's the inside of it, just so you know what the picture is. The stars, you have Timothy Hutton, you have, what's her name, Amy Madigan. You also have Michael Rooker as the sheriff. Julie Harris, music by Christopher Young, based on the book by Stephen King, written and directed by George Romero. And first off, I want to say I do think Scream Factory did a really great job with this. Pat to the deals with features. Yeah, interesting commentary with George Romero and a moderator. That was an interesting commentary. He talked about uh, the difficulties with the making of the film, difficulties working with Timothy Hutton, who was a method actor. So at times he was a pain in the ass. He was the type of guy who's like, you must call me by my character name. And since he's playing two different roles, depending on the day, what role he's playing, you had to call him by that name. Like he was a method actor, pain in the ass. Uh, Also, the studio would look over his shoulder, George Romero's shoulder. It was really hard working with the birds, and then he had to go more digital than he wanted to, and because especially the bankruptcy, some of the effects at the end don't look the greatest. And George Romero himself would be the first one to tell you that for the birds, it's supposed to be the sparrows. I think some of when they have real birds, some of them they used finches, but it's supposed to be sparrows. He talked about how after this film there was like a 7-year period where he didn't work. Well, he didn't direct a movie. He worked writing screenplays. In fact, there was a point where he was actually going to get a green light on The Mummy, and then there was another film with Meryl Streep, like Before I Wake or something like that. So something like that, and things didn't work out. He talks a bit about that. So that was interesting. So it's a pretty good commentary. Usually George Romero's commentaries are pretty good. I remember his commentaries for Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead and Creepshow being very good. And this commentary was no exception. It was a good commentary. Also has a really good making of. It has a pretty lengthy making of, uh, about 40 minutes, 39 minutes. I'm not sure exactly how long it was. It was around 30. It was between 35 to 40 minutes. So it was a pretty lengthy documentary where you get George Romero, special makeup effects creators Everett Burrell and John Vulich, visual effects supervisor Kevin Kuchaffer, actor Robert Joy, editor Pascal Buba, and a few more. Like Michael Rooker does get interviewed. And before I get into the plot, apparently the studio at first wanted Gary Oldman or Willem Dafoe in the lead, which that would have been interesting. I think Timothy Hutton, even though I guess he was a pain in the ass, and on the ass, and in the ass, and up the ass, and through the ass on set, but I still think he did a good job. Timothy Hutton. He's a guy that I don't know him in too many movies. I know I think he won the Oscar for Ordinary People, which I didn't see that movie. That's from like 1980. But Gary Oldman would have been interesting. Willem Dafoe would have been interesting. And also, Michael Rooker's in the film. George Romero's choice was Michael Rooker for the lead. But the studio said, no, that guy can't play a good guy. He could play a villain, but can't play a good guy. Even though later on he was able to cast him as the good sheriff. I mean, the sheriff he plays is not an evil sheriff, it's a good guy. So, I guess as a lead good guy, it's like, okay, he can play the bad guy, but he can't play the good guy. And George Romero disagreed with them, but they wouldn't listen to George Romero, which I thought Timothy Hutton did a good job. But man, thinking of Michael Rooker, George Romero's choice, Michael Rooker in the lead of this, that's very enticing. I would have loved that. That would have been my choice, Michael Rooker. That would have been interesting because he's played some good guys. I mean, usually, cop characters. I mean, this is a cop character, but yeah, I mean, you had films like Replican and stuff like that. But that would have been really interesting to see him in the lead. I know there's a film he did called Shadow Builder or something like that. I haven't seen it, but he's supposed to be like a good guy, a priest. I haven't seen that film yet. But I would like to one day. I think it's called Shadow Builder, or Shadow Chaser, something with shadow in it. And he was actually a good guy in this sort of kind of Predator type of ripoff, very low budget sci-fi channel. And the only reason it was worth a watch for me is Michael Rooker is a good guy, but other than that, it wasn't a great movie. It wasn't the worst movie though. It was like a time waster at best, just for Michael Rooker. But I know I'm going over the place, but overall, I liked the movie actually. This is a movie that I think I saw once a long time ago, but I barely remember anything about it. So if you asked for me before I saw it, I'd be like, eh. But I actually liked this film, and I think what made the film work, it's a good-looking film, it's a well-shot film, It's well acted. I thought everyone in the cast did a great job. Timothy Hutton did a good job in the dual roles of Thad Beaumont and George Stark. Amy Madigan, I thought she did a good job as the wife. They have two kids. The babies were cute. They were sort of like twins. Michael Rooker is the sheriff, who doesn't come in till, what, 20, 30 minutes into the film. And he's in the film, he's a supporting role, but he's not in the film like tons. But he's in it for a little bit, and like he shows up at the end, and he doesn't die or anything. And when he's there, he's good. And his wife is actually played by Michael Rooker's wife. His wife is played by Chelsea Field, which I remember her in stuff like The Last Boy Scout and stuff like that. But before I get into the plot, again, I really want to mention I like the score by Christopher Young. I didn't mention that I liked it before, but I'll mention it now. I like Christopher Young's score. I thought it had a nice sort of choir type of bit. Wasn't too overbearing, at least in my opinion. I thought the score fit the film well. I enjoyed the score. I was listening to the score at the end credits of the movie. And I thought Christopher Young, very talented composer. Once in a while, it's a miss, but usually he knocks it out of the park, Christopher Young. That's a guy who I think is one of the great composers out there, and I thought he did a good job on this one as well. And like I said, this is based on Stephen King. Of course, George Romero had worked with Stephen King before in Creepshow, and uh, there was other stuff. George Romero wanted to do The Stand. He wanted to do Pet Sematary. Things didn't work out. Not because of Stephen King, but just stuff that happened. In fact, one of them is because of something I'll mention in Monty Shines real quick. I'll mention more on that, but real quick, like when I review that, look at the features. Apparently, there was a scene he had to shoot again for Monty Shines, and because he had to do that, he couldn't do Pet Sematary. At least that's what he says on the documentary on that. Which that's another good Blu-ray by Scream Factory, which I'll get into. But what I liked about this film is the story, the idea. I thought the story was really interesting, where Thad Beaumont, Timothy Hutton's character, of course, has a wife and two babies, and he's a teacher. And this guy comes up, Robert Joy, who he worked with George Romero again in Land of the Dead. He was sort of the weird guy who was a crack shot in Land of the Dead. I forget the character's name. But he's like, oh, I know who you are. You're really George Stark. And kind of like Stephen King when he had written under Richard Bachman, for example, the story that would become the Running Man movie. That was written under Richard Bachman, which is a pseudonym for Stephen King. I think Stephen King did that just to go, okay, can my stories be published because I'm Stephen King, or are they going to be published because people think it's actually a good story? So that's why I think he came up with Richard Bachman. But the Timothy Hunt's character had written these stories which were more commercial, nastier, violent stories. And, he kind of wanted to be less commercial and do that and do different kind of stuff. Probably because he has a family and stuff like that. I guess at points when he would uh, write under that George Stark pseudonym, he would sort of almost become him, meaning he would drink and smoke and have moods, and sort of each of us have that dark half, hence the title. And pretty much, I'll get more in detail, but pretty much that dark half sort of comes to life and starts killing people one by one around Thad Beaumont's character, people he knows. And of course, Michael Rooker's the sheriff, looking into it, thinking that Thad Beaumont did it. How did this guy just be believed into existence, really? But I like the idea, and I like the way it's handled. I mean, my only two problems with the film is I think it drags a little tiny bit because it's a little over 2 hours long. It's a little over 2 hours long. I thought maybe 10 minutes or such could have been trimmed. A little bit of the pacing. I'm not saying it has to have a rapid fire MTV editing pacing, but it's a little over 2 hours and just a little bit draggy at points. It didn't bother me tremendous, but it's a little bit draggy at points. And yes, I do agree with George Romero when some of the bird stuff at the end looks good, but some of them looks pretty hokey. Looks pretty. I don't like using the word cheesy, but there's a moment that you could use the word cheesy if you wanted to. It looks not that great of effects digital wise with the birds. Although there is some pretty good makeup effects, which I'll get into. I thought some of the makeup effects were done well, but a little bit of the digital birds that you see in the ending, and a little bit draggy at points at the end. This is a little over 2 hours. But saying that though, I thought it started off in a very interesting way. It starts out with Timothy Hutton's character as a kid getting these headaches, and then to the point he has to go into surgery. And again, I barely remembered anything about this movie, so it's like watching it for the first time. In fact, I don't know if I've seen this. I might have seen this a long time ago. Like, I mean, years and years ago. I mean, like probably I wouldn't be surprised a decade ago. I wouldn't be surprised a decade ago once on TV. And right off the bat, I'm like, wow, okay, he's having headaches and he wants to be a writer. He gets put in surgery. They open up his brain, good practical makeup effects, and a fucking eyeball opens in his brain, a fucking eyeball. And like, what? And like one doctor freaks out and the other doctor's like, this is a twin. That this is a twin that was absorbed into his body, but I guess not all the way or not 100%, or it's they kind of act like it's a tumor in the brain. And they're looking at this eye's like blinking in the brain. There's like a little bit of teeth and stuff in there, and they pretty much take that tissue out. And it is kind of like when you hear about twins and how a twin is, I guess in a way, kind of like basket case, that type of thing, where sometimes a twin gets absorbed you know, into one. Um, and then of course I thought, wow, that's a good effect. Never thought I never thought I'd see the film like The Dark. I don't know. I just didn't expect that. Like, what the hell? I thought it was a really good effect. And then at the same time, all these sparrows are flying around the hospital. And apparently, the sparrows are something to deal in the mythology of this film with how the sparrows they bring the souls from here to the netherworld or the netherworld to here. That sort of mythology thing. That's why the film at times has shots of sparrows, but at least it's consistent. It's not just one time at the beginning and one time at the end. It's at least it's consistently shown throughout, and it's usually real birds. Not in the shot with the at the hospital, but other times you see that there's a lot of there's still some real birds. They just shot some footage. But I did think Timothy Hutton did a good job. I mean, granted, I would be really interested to see Gary Oldman or Michael Rooker play this role. I think that would have been very interesting. Maybe because Timothy Hutton, I'm not going to say he's a bad actor. He's just an actor that I don't know much. I just not the most familiar with his work, I guess is the best way to put it. But I do like the idea. I like the idea. I'm sure Stephen King put a lot of himself into the story, where at least in the original book, if I understand, this is pretty decently faithful. I could be wrong. Never read the book, but from what I understand from other people, it is decently faithful. And I just like the idea that you have this dark half that's. I mean, you could play that a different way. You could do it is a Jekyll and Hyde where it's the same person, the same body, and they're truly schizophrenic and psycho. Or this, I thought, was a different type of Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. It's a different type of thing where it is a separate entity that has been born. And it could be kind of a little bit confusing, but it wasn't too much that bothered me or bugged me. Uh, I mean, like I said, this guy, Robert Joy, comes up to his teaching and says, hey, I know who you are. I'm going to blackmail you because I'm going to tell you that you wrote these trashy horror stories. And then pretty much he's like, Timothy Hutton talks with his family and goes, hey, I better just out it myself so I don't have to play this blackmail game. And gets like a photographer and a writer of a magazine. And Timothy Hutton tells him, this is where I wrote. And it was like the character of George Stark woke up one day and he just started to talk and would write. And even the writer goes, if don't know any better, people would think that's you being schizo. And I thought Timothy Hutton did a good job playing a good guy, nice guy, but then you see that darkness of him. So I do think Timothy Hutton did a good job. He did a thumbs up job. You do have the character actor Royal Dano, Royal Dano in this, who I remember in films like Ghoulies 2, and I remember in, what was it, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This was his final role, which is unfortunate. He's a guy who works at I'm not sure if he works at the cemetery, but he's at the cemetery. There's this little publicity thing where the photographer and stuff, hey, let's have a fake headstone of this character, since you're putting it into this character of George Stark. So I have like a fake headstone. And in fact, we'll put the fake headstone near to right by the grave of your own mother. And even Timmy Hunn's like, this is a little bit too much. But they do it anyway. And you say the quote death of George Stark creates his being. I thought it was interesting in the fact that later on, Michael Rooker, Roy Daniel tells him, hey, this grave's looks like there's a hole right where the spot where that fake headstone was at that looked like someone had come up and climbed out of that spot. And later on, you find out that that human tissue that was cut out, apparently was buried around that point. So you just say use that to help us out become alive. Interesting ideas. I mean, I'm not giving everything away, but fuck, this is a film from 1993. I like doing more in-depth reviews. I like that. Talk about what I like and dislike in certain scenes. For example, a scene that I like is, not only do I like Michael Rooker as the sheriff, but he comes into play because the photographer coming home at night, there's a hitchhiker, and the guy gets just pulled out. As he gets pulled out, his prosthetic leg stays there and is hanging off the door. So the bad guy pulled so hard, the fucking prosthetic leg of the photographer is hanging by the door. And then later on, when Michael Rooker finds the guy dead, decent makeup effects. It's good makeup effects, and they find out that he was beaten to death with his own prosthetic leg. I thought that was an interesting idea. And even Michael Rooker, tells his deputy, "I want to get this fucker." So I love Michael Rooker. I think he's a great underrated actor. But like stuff I don't like. There's one scene I think there's little trims you can make. I think that's one of my only issues is a little bit draggy at points. For example, this scene I think could have been completely cut out, where you have there's a different cop deputy who finds the vehicle of the dead photographer, looks in, sees that there's a little bit of blood, says some stupid lines like, what the hell did it say? Oh, ask Mama if she believes this. I gotta ask Mama if she believes this. What the fuck does that mean? Maybe that was in the Stephen King book. I don't know. I gotta ask Mama if she believes this. But what the fuck does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? Ask whose mama? Your mama? Michael Rooker's mama? Is this like a jive? Your mama? What the fuck are you talking about? And really, that scene was completely useless because it's like a fate steer. Oh shit, someone's coming up behind him? No, it's a fucking newspaper. Ooh, a newspaper. You gonna read it? Oh shit, my stock is dead? Foo, fucking scary newspaper floating around. Like, that's a scene that could have been cut out. Because there was nothing interesting or frightening. I thought the actor was subpar. Or at least his line of dialogue. Well, ask Mama. Mama told me not to come. I don't know what I already forgot what the hell he said. Ask Mama, believe this. Was like Roman Reigns, believe this. Predecessor Roman Reigns. But I that was like that's what I mean. There's scenes like that that could have been completely cut out because later on, Michael Rooker even tells, we found the vehicle that the photographer had, and it had your prints in it. It had prints in it, and they matched yours. It was fine with dialogue. That's a scene that could have been completely cut out and help with the pace. So that's what I mean. That's when I talk about little stuff that could have been cut out. That's a scene, for example. But it's, like I said, Michael Rooker finds prints. It leads to him. Um, Timothy Hutton starts, hearing the birds, the sparrows, having these weird sort of trances. Because when this thing, George Stark was pretty much a part of him, his dark half, and when it's become alive, they sort of share this bond. I thought that was an interesting thing. At least to, like, I think he has a pretty cool dream. What I mean by cool is has some stuff, for example, he walks in, this vase just sort of shatters by itself, like collapses more like it by itself. And then, like earlier, his wife was making a turkey, so he looks in, there's another turkey, but it's bleeding blood. And he finds his wife, and his wife is this weird image where it's painted white, but has these red sort of crosses on her, and her face shatters, and there's a skull underneath. And that looked really cool. It didn't look like 100% digital. It looked really cool. And I'm like, wow, how the hell did they do that? Unfortunately, I don't remember them talking about how they did that effect. Maybe they did. I don't remember too much on that one. Um, but that was really good. I thought that was a really cool shot, the way they did that. And then pretty much uh, that Beaumont, that George Stark is killing people one by one who kind of associate with his death, the article. So like his publishers, he goes after, the evil, George Stark. Which I think Timothy Hutton does a good job with that as well, because more of a southern guy, has some different kind of hair, wearing sort of, what do you call it? I don't know if you call it leather or something like that. Has scars on his face. It's funny. He kills a couple people with a razor. Kind of like this razor here. I, there's one scene which I like the lighting in this. He kills this guy who wrote the article, has his little ponytail, and the lights are sort of interesting thing with the lights. It goes red then blue, red and blue. When you see the evil Timothy Hutton, sort of his dark half, which has been brought to life, he looks like Michael Keaton. And even George Romero says he looks like Beetlejuice. He looks, yeah, Michael Keaton. And like he does kind of look like Michael Keaton, especially if you look at this scene with a guy with a little ponytail. He gets killed in this hallway that's lighting blue and red. When you look at him, he kind of, especially a moment where a guy opens the door and then the George Stark character looks at him because the guy's asked, "What's happening?" And he goes, "Murder. You want to join or you want to see or something?" Like he looks like Michael Keaton. He looks like a crazy Michael Keaton. So I thought that was kind of funny, actually. Um, but he's killing people one by one. They're wondering, okay, is you know, people think it's Thad Beaumont, of course, and I do think it was an interesting dynamic. He gets phone calls from the guy. He gets pretty much George Stark wants him to write another book because George Stark is fallen apart since his death, and he was kind of born into existence, and he's automatically dying. He's like, no, you need to write another book. And you see that throughout, he's sort of falling apart. Like there's a scene where the bad Timothy Hutton is looking in the mirror and he's touching someone. I did good makeup if he touches like this. You see like doesn't look quite like blood, but kind of looks like some other type of liquid falling down. I don't want to say pus, but some type of liquid. I just thought it was really a pretty nifty makeup effects. and gets phone calls. The good Timothy Hunt trying to figure out where the guy's at. So I like this idea where tit for tat, he tries to go into George Stark's head and gets into a trance and is writing down, finding out that okay, you're falling apart and stuff. And you realize actually during the writing that George Stark is writing through him saying, "You son of a bitch, you get out of my head." It makes the good Timothy Hutton stab himself with a pencil right in the hand. I just like the way that scene played off. I think it's an interesting idea, the whole film. I think that really helps the film for me. It has a good score by Christopher Young, has capable performances, it has it's definitely not a slash movie, it's definitely not a gore movie, it's definitely not that kind of movie, creature feature movie or anything. I guess I don't know if you want to call it more adult horror, whatever you want to call it. But I thought good acting, interesting ideas and story, good score. I mean, even Roger Ebert says, a terrific premise for a thriller, and director George Romero sets it up with skill and style. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. And let's see, where was I going with this? Even to the point where he finds out that, jumping ahead, bad guy has his wife and kids. Gotta go where he needs to go. Where is this certain cabin? I also want to mention this older woman played by Julie Harris. I thought she did a good job. She's sort of an older woman that's trying to help the good Timothy Hutton, trying to help figure out what's going on. Why does this happen? How did George Stark come alive? What's the deal with the sparrows? There's even a moment where he writes without knowing the sparrows are flying. And other people find out dead. Like way before all that, you find Robert Joy's character dead. My friend's in New York, so maybe he'll get a chuckle out of this, where this landlady's with these cops, and she's like, you need to pay me rent, and if these guys don't take you out, I want my rent first. And they come in, her and the cops, and you see that there's like a shadow, so you get the idea that the guy's dick was cut off and put in his mouth. And showing that in shadow was good enough, but what made me chuckle was the woman's reaction. She kind of looks at him, and so like, great. Like this is sort of that reaction. Like that's New York. A woman finds a guy dead, cops around her, and finds the guy tenant dead with a dick in his mouth, and that's her reaction. Great, or something like that. I just got a chuckle out of that. But it's New York. People in New York know the fucking shit. They don't get surprised by shit. Fuck. But I don't know why. For some reason, I think people in New York cuss a lot too. I don't know why. But I thought Julie Harris, as a friend of good Timothy, I thought she did a good job as well. But pretty much, I mean, he final confrontation. You have certain scenes where you have the good and the bad Timothy Hutton in the same scene. So you have to do those things with those special cameras, kind of like I just kind of like Back to the Future too. Those kind of movies did. At the end of the confrontation, one telling the other, "You gotta write for me." It even gets to a point where Thad, good Timothy Hutton, is like, "Why don't you write it yourself?" And the guy starts writing, and now Timothy Hutton, the good one, is falling apart. And you see that his face is red, and you see like blood coming down. And all of a sudden, good Timothy Hutton is enough, and he fights and is able to actually stab the bad one in the throat, and save his kids. Michael Rooker gets there to help untie Amy Madigan. I thought she did a good job. She played a good wife. She wasn't bitchy. She wasn't annoying. She wasn't irritating. She kind of went out on a limb for this guy that she loves. She wasn't bitchy. She wasn't moaning and groaning. She wasn't crying all the time, 24/7. I thought she did a good job, Amy Madigan. I thought she was actually capable, like, pretty strong character. And when I mean strong, I mean she wasn't, that shit. And pretty much that's where the sparrows, the birds, they're poking holes. And there's some nice close-ups of practical effects, but you did some bits of digital as well. As Michael Rooker comes in, gets the girl, they go up. I guess in the original ending, which they show the original ending on this, which I mean it wasn't finished, but the birds were supposed to lift the bad guy and lift him out, but the test screen went badly because it wasn't finished, and they're like, no, just let the birds eat the shit out of them. Which is fine. So you get some good practical gory effects of the birds pecking the evil Timothy Hutton, pecking his face off and pecking until caving into his skull. I think some pretty good gore effects in that sequence. I thought it was really good, practical. But then you had the digital birds uh, fly him away, the rest of his bones, and all these really bad-looking digital birds fly away. And I swear they go into a portal that's like out of Ghostbusters. It's like this portal in the distance that's, I think for some reason it makes me think of, you know that scene in Ghostbusters where the roof of their station blows up and everything fucks over the city. It just looks like a portal open up and that sort of, which I like that in Ghostbusters, but I'm fine with the portal because fuck it, whatever. But the digital birds, not the greatest, but even George Romero would admit that. I thought it was cute that the babies are kind of, pop, pop, sort of a reference to an earlier film where he's talking about, good Timothy Hunt's talking about, should I end this character, let people know that I did right under this name, and the babies are doing this. I guess it's unanimous. They didn't even say that word right. Shows how late it is. Damn, I don't even have a watch, but I'm looking at my wrist for some reason. But the babies were cute, and really just that's how it ends. There's Michael Rooker, there's the good Timothy Hutton, his wife and kids. Motherfucker, evil one has gone off, and then the movie ends. Doesn't bullshit around. It ends when it ends. The monster's dead, and then the movie ends. And I just sat to listen to the credits. I thought, again, I like Christopher Young's music. So yeah, other than some bad digital effects of the birds at the end, and a little bit of sluggish pace once in a while, some stuff that could have been cut out, like that scene I mentioned, I still really liked it. I mean, I liked the performances, I liked the idea, good score by Christopher Young. Again, this is a really good Blu-ray. Again, very interesting commentary with George Romero, with a moderator. He usually does keep saying again and again and again and again. George Romero, good commentary, good making of retrospective. Also has deleted scenes, that alternate ending, behind the scenes footage, vintage EPK, trailer, TV spot, original storyboards. Pretty packed with features. The only big name I can see that wasn't interviewed in the making of was Timothy Hutton and Amy Madigan, because they do talk to a lot of people, including, Christopher Young. I remember he does get interviewed as well. Michael Rooker does get interviewed during that. He tells about how it was, working with George Romero was one of the highlights of his career, which that was really cool. I thought it was a pretty good movie. I mean, I'm trying to think of all of George Romero's films. I know my favorite's Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Monty Shines. I'd probably put this in the top 5 George Romero films, because I know Creepshow would be in there and this would be in there. Of course, that's like almost the only 5 George Romero films I like. But I liked this film. That was a well done film. Good Stephen King movie. I thought George Romero did a really good job with this. And definitely give it a thumbs up. If you like the film, definitely pick up the Blu-ray. It's well worth it. If you don't like the film, you probably didn't see this review anyway. But if you like the film, definitely pick up this Blu-ray from Scream Factory. This is one that I don't always kiss Scream Factory's ass, because they can come up with good ones like this. This is a good Blu-ray. This is a good making of and documentary and deleted scenes and alternate ending and EPT from back in the day and a trailer and a TV spot. Why can't you do that with all of them? That's one thing I say about Scream Factory. I Come in Peace and Leviathan. It's cool they got a Blu-ray. But they're not as stacked as this. And let's face it, I liked this film. The Dark Half is not one of those films that a lot of people talk about. How many people talk about The Dark Half? But hey, it's a good film. Watch it again. It is a good film. And it's got packed with shit. Every film should do that. Don't worry about selling your fucking Nightbreeds for $100, where the fuck the price was. Where the hell it was. You know, do this. I Come in Peace. I think more people know about I Come in Peace than this movie. That should have been as stacked as this, with TV spots, with interviews with Matthias Hughes, which I guess is an overseas one. Did interviews with the guy who did the score, Jan Hammer. Did interviews with some of the guys who did the makeup and so on. Did a commentary with Kratar Baxley, maybe Brian Benman, who knows, maybe Dolph Lundgren. Did more. Did some behind the scenes footage from back in the day, anything. But anyway, I'm just. Same with Leviathan. My friend Mike found some stuff that you could put on there and you didn't, like a make up from back in the day, little EPK thing, TV spots and shit for Leviathan. Instead of having a documentary where half the time they're bashing the film. But I know, I always do that. That's what I mean. I'm not going to kiss Scream Factory's ass. And yes, I know they were being honest in Leviathan. I understand. You can't just censor people if... I get that. It's one of the only times you do get that, and it happens to be for a favorite of mine. That's just, I don't know. I didn't see both sides of the argument, okay? I can see it. I know I should be talking about this. But I talked about it for 40 minutes. Give me a break. But, I keep saying again and but like 50 times. Good movie. Dark Half. I really liked it. Go end it here, so I'm not repeating myself anymore. Thanks for watching. Take care. And next time I'm going to do a review for Monty Shines. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you later.